The slightly surreal thing now for myself is that this is now being streamed live on YouTube. So, Mr. Butcher and I now have our equity cards, and I've been in makeup since 5:45. So, this is a truly odd experience for us, so please play up for the camera. We're delighted that you've come. We hopefully now, in the next half an hour, 3/4 hour, will take you through what we have been doing with the Upper Six with regard to university applications. It's a time that we need your support, because obviously the next 12 months are the most important months for us to get our young charges off to university. So all your help and support is greatly, greatly appreciated. So I'll hand over to Mr. Butcher now, and then later on we'll do a second-rate double act, and we will hopefully give you all the information that you need. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about three things. First of all, what we've been doing over the last 6 months with the lower six as they were then. Then Mr. Brown and I will be talking about the personal statement, which is our focus at the moment. And then later on, a little bit about student finance, just to explain how it works in 2013, 2014. So, in January, we invited the University of Central Lancashire, who came in to give a talk to the students to explain a little bit about university. Then in February, we had them sit the COA centigrade test, which is a test that matches their skills, interests and abilities and where they want to live, and suggest universities and courses that would be of interest. In March, knowing what, with that kind of information, we went to the Higher Education Fair, which is in Manchester Central, or the GMEX as I know it. And there they had the chance to actually go to talks presented by UCAS and to meet the universities and to get prospectuses. In April time and May time, Mr. Bradley and I did a series of 4 sessions that were based on the personal statement. So the students, by the end of last year, knew how to write a personal statement, and they were holding in their hands the same piece of paper you have now. Our target to them, and it's still the same target as at the moment, was twofold. One, begin writing your personal statement and collect ideas. And secondly, to start visiting the universities, which is where we are today. So, personal statement. Before we get to that, talking a little bit about application. The application window, the UCAS website, is now open and now accepting students. Over the last week, Mr. Bradley, myself and Mr. Asher, at the end of last term, have been getting the students' passwords and login IDs. Any student here, any of the Year 13 who've not yet done that, please go to see Mr. Asher. He's had an influx over the last week. So most of the students now have access to the UCAS website, and we're at the stage where they need to upload their personal statements once they've been approved by Mr. Bradley or myself, and then they will be applying. Obviously, competition is very, very tough at the moment. The universities, I'm sure you saw, have actually had a drop, haven't they, Mr. Bradley, we were told, in the number of applications. However, the university world today is a very different place than it was when a young Andrew Butcher arrived at Loughborough University in 1997. The grades have gone up significantly through the roof, and to get into many universities now that our students are aiming to get in, we're talking A's and B grades. But of course, not everybody can get into those kind of universities. The deadlines. So obviously the university window is now open. Oxbridge, medicine, dentistry, veterinary, we have a few students interested in doing these courses. They will all know that they need to get their application in by the 15th of October. Most courses are in January. Also says 2011. It doesn't make any difference. It's the same every year. And January is when the massive influx of applications go onto the university, onto the UCAS website. However, Rossall's is a very, very different deadline. Mr. Bradley and I discussed it, and we said last year we wanted everything done by the end of October, or before the end of October half term. So that would give our students the best chance to get an application off early. And if you look on the first page here, they tell you why. So on page 4, admissions tutors will start looking at their applications in September. Mr. Bradley, didn't we have a student last year who applied in September?
As you may know, Mrs. Holder Williams, who's the head of art at school, her son Toby applied in the first statement away week 1 of the upper 6. By week 3 of the upper 6, he had his first offers. So that's why we want to go 2 months ahead of the official deadline.
Last year, I think we achieved around 96% completion of personal statements and applications by the end of October. This year, we're aiming for 100%, and our first person who sat in this room has already uploaded their personal statement, which is fantastic. The reality is these admissions tutors are faced with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, and they will start processing them. So please feel free to nag and get the students writing their personal statements. Mr. Bradley and myself are normally the people that read them and will give them advice. So please ask them to send them to us by email and we'll have a look at them. Most of us should also be aware of any entrance tests, for example LNAT, which is a law test, UCAS and BMAT, which are medicine tests used by UCAS is obviously used by most of the universities, and BMAT is used by some of the very challenging ones like Imperial, Oxford and Cambridge. There are also students can apply this year for a deferred entry. They can delay it, they can still apply, which is actually a very sensible thing to do. We had students last year saying, it's fine, I will wait till next year. And Mr. Brodley and I said to them, why don't you do it this year? Because we're here to give you advice on the personal statement. We've actually, had to be fair, we have had students who've come back to us who left, and we have given them advice, but it's much easier for us to give them advice while they're here. So even if anybody, and I'm sure there are people who are thinking about it, please get writing it now. Okay, where to do your research. Now, the first one there says prospectuses. Now, I've been looking at prospectuses over the last few months, and actually the book forms of prospectuses tend to not be quite so detailed as the website. Now, the majority of the students, I'm guessing, despite the fact that we went to Manchester and collected them, most of the students, I suspect, will be doing it online. I would highly recommend this, as I had a look, for example, at the University of Cumbria and Manchester Metropolitan for a couple of courses to do with primary education. And the level of detail was much, much better on the actual university website. So my recommendation to you today would be to do that. The second thing is league tables. We had the world rankings, which were published this week, where we had, I think, was it 4 universities in the top 5, or 3 in the top 5. I'm personally not a big fan of these things. I don't think you can label a university so much on a grade. I don't think it works like that. I think the big question here is getting the right course, the right university for the right student. So the kind of questions the students need to ask themselves are, 1, can I live here? So what that means is, do I want to be at a campus-based university, somewhere like Loughborough University, or do I want to be in the city? What we tend to find is many of the students, because they've been living in Rossall, in some cases for 2 years, or in some cases for 17 years, many of them are very, very comfortable in the campus environment, somewhere like Lancaster or Loughborough. But other ones not so. They much prefer somewhere very cosmopolitan, like the centre of Manchester or the centre of Leeds. So the best idea is to go to these universities and visit them. See how they feel when you're there, and ask that question, can I live here? Mr. Bradley, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yes, I think the league tables is a fantastic point. If there are 3 divisions of the university, Russell Group, 94 Group and the Millennium Group. Possibly for high academia, you would not consider the Millennium Group. But just on the off chance that your forte was forensic archaeology, then the best university in the country is UCLan, Preston Polytechnic. So, whilst it might appear at 80, 90, 100 in the league tables, if you specifically want that course, then it is number 1 in the country. So please don't just judge by league tables. Okay, that's really quite important. You've got to get, as Mr. Butcher said, the right course at the right university. And in a moment, when we talk about personal statements, I'll briefly talk more about managing expectations, both my upper sixth, and also my counts.
Okay. The last thing is, this is the time of year when there are many, many open days between, particularly at the end of September. I'm sure you're all aware of this. Many of them are on a Saturday, which is fine, but some of the universities, for example, Lancaster, do them on a Wednesday, so I would encourage you to check when the open days are. I personally prefer the students to go on a Wednesday, and Mr. Bradley says to the students they're allowed 2 days out of school with his permission to go during term time. The reason is, you can see the university exactly as it is. Last November I took a group of students to Lancaster, and they got to experience actually what a student day is like, what it's like to stand outside Greg's pasty shop, as they all persuaded me to go there in the afternoon with them. What it's like to go in the gym, which in Lancaster was like a nightclub. However, I was sort of missing the bar in the corner. But actually see students in their proper environment. It's fine on a Saturday, but because there are no lessons, it's a little bit more artificial. So make sure you check when the open days are and go and visit these places. Right, on to the actual personal statement. Where do we start? We're on page, starts on page 4, how to begin. Essentially, the personal statement is divided into 2 sections. The first section, it says on here, is 60%. That is the academic section. However, 60% is a little bit of a loose term. If I were applying to Oxford, I would make that 95% academic. If I was applying to medicine, I would probably make it about 75%. The more academic the course and the university, so we're talking about the top colleges and universities, make it more academic. Again, some of the universities don't even read personal statements, but we have to go on a system of best practice and assume every single admissions tutor does. In this section, and it's here, it says on the sheet, you need to include books you have read outside of the course. So if you're interested in philosophy, tell them that you were first inspired by reading Nietzsche when you were 16 years old. Any journals, periodicals, some of the IB students went to do research for their extended essay, they'll have read academic journals. Any courses or trips, people who've been on, medicine trips, Duke of Edinburgh, actually that won't be relevant for perhaps maybe unless it's for geology or geography, but generally any kind of work experience you've done. It says on here science documentaries or art programmes. I'm personally not a big fan of that. I don't like telling admissions tutors that I like watching TV. Anything you've done for a gap year, so if somebody's gone to work as a gap year or maybe gone to do work experience in a hospital, shadowing somebody for a few weeks or shadowing a vet. We have contacts here. If we need to get in touch with doctors, someone needs to shadow a doctor, we can do that. In the second part, we're more focused off the academic and actually looking at aspects of skills that the student has. So these are things, for example, positions of responsibility. So for example, in the house, the students might have sports roles. So for example, be a captain of a sports team or school captain. These are very, very important things. Why? They need to know about the skills the student has. So this is about this list here of skills they have. So for example, interpersonal skills, leadership, numeracy. They want to know these things, and the skills they're going to want to know will be the ones that relate to the course. So, for example, if you want to be a doctor or a nurse, there is a good chance you're going to require skills such as compassion. You may be faced with people in harrowing situations, and you need to be sympathetic to them. Have you done something in your time where you can demonstrate that you have that skill? A nurse will be faced with death probably on a weekly basis. They will have to have the emotional strength to be able to deal with that kind of thing. Can they prove that? Have they been on a trip, for example, World Challenge, where they've seen impoverished children and seen hunger face to face and worked in the face of that? All about skills. It's about showing them, not telling them. Some of the worst personal statements you see will say, I have confidence, I'm very good with new people. Prove that to me. Tell me you've got a job in a cafe. In my case, I worked as different when I was 17. Worked with different people of all ages. So I said, I've got good interpersonal skills. I usually get shouted at because people can't find the eggs. Despite the fact there's a big sign saying eggs on the wall.
I was never as lucky as Mr. Butcher to reach the dizzy heights of Asda. With being a professional northerner, I worked in a weaving shed Fantastic. Utterly fantastic. Now, the personal statement is personal. And that's the key. Try and avoid cliches. Because there's been several instances over the past 2 or 3 years where people have not got the university of their choice. Where people have not got the university of their choice because of their awfully cliche opening statement. One for medicine is, I want to go into medicine because when I was 8 years old, I was given a chemistry set. 60 or 70 people used this, and 60 or 70 people did not get into medicine because the UCAS people use fantastic plagiarism software, and they will check that you haven't downloaded a large section of a book and put it in as your own words. So personal means personal to you. Now, when we apply, we will have to do a school reference, and the school reference will have predicted grades on it. I encourage the Upper Six to talk to my colleagues, gently negotiate with my colleagues. You think I'm an E, I think I'm an A. Let's try and meet somewhere in the middle. But managing expectations is very, very important. And that is the point about applying to a university, which is realistic for us. Okay? Now, sometimes that might not be easy for mum and dad to hear, because I know I have 3 children myself, and in 5 years' time, my eldest daughter will be going through the same process, and if someone turns around to me and says, "Mr. Bradley, I'm afraid she's a D-grade student," you know, I'm going to say, "Okay," and blame Mrs. Bradley for the second-rate genetics. But, so it's managing expectation. It really is. So please, don't say, "I'm sure you're an Oxford candidate," when quite clearly you're not. So, the personal statement is key. The opening paragraph has to be passion. Now, Mr. Butcher hates the word passion.
With a passion.
If he sees that word, he automatically crosses it out. But you have to prove in that opening paragraph why you want to do the subject. Now, when I applied to university last millennium, as it turns out, we didn't have to go through this fantastic process. Now, we have to stand out from the crowd. And even though we've been to universities, we've recently been to Liverpool University, and the extremely cocky professor of politics said, "No, I don't read statements." And that was it. So I said, "Why do you make my students jump through the hoops then?" And he had no answer. But other people we met at Liverpool said, "Yes, we look at them." So we have to do best practice and ensure that our statements are the best that they can be. Opening paragraph. Why I want to do this subject. Then, the skills that my subjects have taught me. The personal skills Mr. Butcher's spoken about. And then the final paragraph is along the lines of, I intend to work hard for my geography-based degree. I know that university is hard work, but it will provide me with both social and academic skills that I can use throughout life. They want to know that you intend to work hard. The university admissions tutors basically ask 2 questions. The 2 questions are, can this person study at this university? And can this person study this course? Those are the 2 questions, in essence, that they ask when they pick up your personal statement. And this is the chance for us to prove that. So, It really is so, so important. By the time they leave Mr. Butcher and I, the personal bit, Rose House, bless them, didn't actually have the concept of what personal meant. Personal for Rose House meant passing it along every girl in the corridor and seeing how many times the 18 of them could work one statement. Personal, please, is you. Then we will polish it, and then it will go. And by the time it is polished, you'll think, that is quite good. You will look at your own children and think, really? Is that them? And yes, it is. It's fantastic.
I'm sure this goes without saying that most people will write this in Word and use a spell checker or something equivalent. That's a very good idea. The UCAS website is, I think, HTML based and has no word checking facility. On page 9 here, there are some wonderful examples of complete shockers. My favourite being the third one down, where someone's written, "I am training a pet rat and have recently become interested in reading." I also enjoy driving, especially off the road, and I have many interests, both intellectual, spelt wrong, and social. And there are a couple of examples, I think, on the slide, things that people have left in. So I'm working with a software developer. Do I need to talk about this job? It's quite technical. Or is all this crap relevant or not? Doesn't make the best impression, does it really? Also, I think I would also suggest there's also the 10 golden rules. One of them being perhaps try not to use too many big words. If you would normally describe yourself as an egregious person, then fine, put it in. If you have no idea what egregious means, leave it out. They would much rather you be yourself in these things. And the most important is those two words there. Don't tell them, show them. Prove who you are and what you're good at. Got a couple of examples of personal statements. First one, I'll give you 30 seconds or so to have a quick read of it.
This isn't a test, by the way. We're just 30 seconds. We're not, or else. Take 45. Unfortunately, all that says is I watch a lot of telly.
It also defines the subject. Now, criminology is all about crime and punishment. The professor has been studying criminology for 30 years. He doesn't need an 18-year-old's help with that. Not necessary. Second one.
This reminds me of when I teach on a sort of, well, I tend to, and I look around the classroom and I ask a question, and no one makes eye contact with me. You're doing exactly the same. It's difficult, this one. You look at it and you think, it's actually quite, the sentiments there, there's definitely passion there, but it's that first sentence. It's a bit cheesy. Yeah, and these are things that students have written.
Yeah, this is an egregious person.
This is an egregious person.
Last one. This personal statement actually got the student an interview at Oxford University. Unfortunately, it didn't get the next 200 that decided to steal it from studential.com, which is what Mr. Bradley said. I actually quite like these websites. If, for example, you want to find out how much accommodation is in Portsmouth University. If you Google it, you quite often get information from the student room, and it can be really, really useful to get into university. But in terms of writing the personal statement, we're back in Rose House. I personally wouldn't do that. As you can see, you had people who'd written dramatic chemistry set, which Mr. Bradley mentioned before, 234 of them. We had 370 on a fascination with the human body, which sounds a little bit disturbing to me. And an elderly or infirm grandfather. I've not yet found too many 17-year-olds who know what the word infirm means. So, of course, they have really fantastic plagiarism software, and it's a good idea to avoid those websites in terms of writing a personal statement. Now, the universities are very keen to tell us, this is very kind, the headmaster very kindly sent this to me, that they do not discriminate against students who are independent schools. The headmaster gave me a document that sort of tells me that they're lying. On the right-hand side, I don't know if you can see it at the back, they've got percentages. If you are at an independent school and you apply to the University of Bristol, there is a 44% chance you will get an offer. So, the University of Leeds at 77 likes independent students. University of Nottingham likes us. University of Oxford, 28%, which is about Rossall's kind of average. We normally have about 5 students a year, 1 or 2 get in, 5, 6 students. So we're about that range. So actually, Oxford say that they like students from independent schools. This information, perhaps they would say they don't look at it. I'm not sure personally that I believe them. If you apply to the University of Southampton, 85% chance of getting in. Of course, we can split that down even further into subjects. I think they look at medicine on the next page. Oxford Brookes likes us. University of York like us very much. University of Liverpool, all good Russell Group universities. Again, LSE in London, 31% chance if you are studying at a boarding school or an independent school. There is a high chance you will not get that offer. Your personal statement has to be fantastic and your predicted grades have to be perfect. Imperial 71, which is a nice surprise. However, for medicine, Imperial is a lot lower, I think, on the 3rd page.
What's the likelihood of a state school student getting an offer at those universities?
It's a very good question.
Bristol.
At any of them?
Yeah.
Because actually that's what...
Yeah, absolutely, because at the end of the day we are in competition with the maintained sector. And
so
Bristol...
the likelihood of anyone getting an offer at Bristol is only 30%.
That's right. Bristol do discriminate against us. They positively discriminate against the maintained sector.
And if you look at that, Imperial, however, for medicine is only 30%. So if you're studying to want to go for medicine at Imperial, much more challenging than, say, the University of Birmingham, which is 60%. If anybody would like this information at the end, I'll happily show you the slide. Or the University of Manchester at 54. So we've got a challenge, and we have to tell the students when they're applying, they need to come and talk to us and say, should I be applying for this university? We'll check this information. The same with the college, some of the colleges, we know where will like us and where won't. So these are actually very, very important. If anybody likes this at the end, please come and see me. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about student finance. Finance? Sorry, do you want to carry on?
Yes, before we go on to finance, just a word about gap years. If you are considering having a gap year, when I was younger, it was the trend to leave your A-levels, go interrailing around Europe, and then go to university, which is absolutely fine because there wasn't the same competition. Unfortunately now, you can't go on holiday for 6 months. If you do decide to take a gap year, your gap year has to be relevant. So, if you decide that you